The question facing American policymakers comes down to the following, in my view. When Greenland inevitably obtains independence from Denmark, as their leaders again tell us that they will, who is going to greet them on the other side?
Russia has core national security and economic interests in the Arctic. It is a region of top importance to Russia. China also has interests in the Arctic.
The United States is running out of time to develop a coherent strategic response to an independent Greenland. The security stakes are too high to allow Greenland to obtain independence without a plan in place for the U.S. to ensure our core strategic interests are assured.
Well, you just heard testimony given on Wednesday before a U.S. congressional committee. The topic, U.S. ownership of Greenland. The island is part of the Danish Kingdom, but the leading political parties there favor independence from Denmark. Enter U.S. President Donald Trump and his idea that the U.S. should, or that Greenland should belong to the United States. Well, my next guest tonight is Marisol Maddox. She's a senior Arctic fellow at the Institute of Arctic Studies and at the John Sloan Dickey Center for International Understanding at Dartmouth College. She joins me tonight from the great state of Maine. Marisol, it's good to have you with us. So put this, if you could, into perspective for us. Why are we talking about Greenland and why now?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me. So the interest in Greenland has been there really since World War II, and it has flared up at different times, depending on the status of the international security environment. And now, as the U.S. is pivoting towards China and the Indo-Pacific, we're thinking about Greenland and the Arctic within the context of a very changed security environment, which includes both the economic security around things like rare earth minerals, as well as a heightened threat environment from new types of advanced missiles that our continental defense was not built to be able to track and counter.
Yeah, so you're talking about this race to win, not only win over the people of Greenland, but also to secure its strategic position and the material resources underground. What are the consequences if the U.S. loses that race to either Russia or China?
So I think that it's actually better to kind of think about the consequences of us getting in our own way, which is so far really what's playing out. We have been in a very strategically advantageous position throughout time with Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. We have had agreements that have only further solidified the U.S. as a very important ally to Greenland. And so, in this 2004 agreement that created a joint committee that specifically includes the U.S., Greenland, and Denmark in conversations around things like economic development. We also have a permanent committee to discuss defense matters. And we have, advanced cooperation with Greenland, both with security since 2023. Greenland now has a NATO envoy at the Danish seat at NATO. And Greenland has signaled that they are interested in staying in the alliance and being militarily aligned. And then from an economic standpoint, Greenland is in the Mineral Security Partnership. We have a great relationship that has made them want to do business with us, but we've seen some changes recently that could really compromise the ability to do so and could actually create opportunities for actors like China.
So President Trump's stance, and if I understand you correctly, is actually hurting the strong position that the U.S. already enjoys in Greenland.
Yeah, it's really something where I think really what we're seeing is an approach towards Greenland that is not really focused on an assessment of what are the best ways to actually secure the stated interests, what we're seeing is really something about power projection. And you have to take what's happening in Greenland within the larger context of what's happening in Canada, with Panama, with Gaza, right? This is about the larger kind of Trump 2.0 approach towards foreign policy, which is a very different approach even from the first Trump administration, when we reopened the U.S. consulate in Nuuk.
And if you had the ear of U.S. President Donald Trump, and if he were listening to you, what would you tell him is the best policy to follow moving forward regarding Greenland?
I would say that we have a wonderful relationship with an incredible ally, and that we should be pursuing the very positive engagement that we have. And really, through having, when Greenland wants to do business with us, then that creates opportunities for American companies. So already I'm hearing from American businesses that are trying to do business in Greenland that their meetings are being compromised by the politicization of these issues. Even with the USAID funding that was cut, that included cuts to Greenland. And so, that was something that was seeking to implement activities that promote enterprise-driven growth in Greenland and trade opportunities for the United States. And then just lastly, I would say that, the global market around things like minerals is highly distorted by things like Chinese price controls. And so there are ways that the U.S. could be incentivizing American companies through tax incentives or loan guarantees to be able to overcome some of those hurdles and then, be able to compete in a more economically normal way once they're established. But really, this approach currently is very counterproductive to being able to advance and secure those American interests.
Yeah, you mentioned the broader picture here, and we seem to be returning to an older kind of foreign policy, to a time of spheres of influence, of the great powers using their superior muscle to get their way. If the United States does acquire Greenland, would that encourage China, for example, to step up its efforts to take Taiwan?
It certainly validates a spheres of influence approach towards international relations. So I think it certainly would encourage China to think about Taiwan within that context. And then even in terms of the Russian aggression in Ukraine, it's kind of some similar language. Even kind of the language that we're hearing around Canada is actually similar to the language that we heard from Putin about Ukraine. So I would say that is, very concerning.
And I got about a minute left, Marisol. So I want to be clear on this. For the people in Greenland, though, the focus right now is an upcoming election and then a referendum on independence from Denmark. That's what's in their mind right now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one way that Americans and the world could even think about why it is so inappropriate for the United States to be pursuing an acquisition of Greenland at this time is if you think back to the American Revolution, when the U.S. was trying to get sovereignty from the Brits. If the French had come in and said, "Oh, we want to buy you," we would have said, "No, we're not interested. We want to be our own country." And that right now is what Greenland is going through. Thankfully, they don't have to fight with Denmark, but that is like the similar kind of equivalency.
That's an interesting historical analogy there, too. Fascinating. Marisol Maddox from the Institute of Arctic Studies at Dartmouth College. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and giving us some fascinating insights into the situation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.